everybody, it's my turn to do your bedtime story today. I'm really missing all of you and I hope you're all keeping safe and managing to have a bit of fun in all this. I look forward to seeing you all when this is over, so stay safe. So I'm going to read you a bit of Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So my lovely Crucible class, we were reading this just before we break up and I've just skipped ahead a couple of pages. So Roald Dahl's about a gorgeous little boy called Charlie who came from a very poor family, and there was a chocolate factory nearby. And luckily one day, Willy Wonka, who had not let anyone in for years, had decided to have a competition, and if you found a golden ticket in a chocolate wrapper you could go to the chocolate factory. Now we've just at the scene where a few of the characters and Charlie and his granddad are just entering the chocolate factory and they're about to meet Mr. Willy Wonka. So chapter 14, Mr. Willy Wonka. Mr. Wonka was standing all alone just inside the open gates of the factory. What an extraordinary little man he was. He had a black top hat on his head and he wore a tailcoat made of beautiful plum-coloured velvet. His trousers were bottle green and his gloves were pearly grey. And in one hand he carried a fine gold-topped walking cane. Covering his chin there was a small, neat, pointed black beard, a goatee, and his eyes were marvellously bright. They seemed to be sparkling and twinkling at you all the time. The whole face, in fact, was alight with fun and laughter. Oh, how clever he looked, how quick and sharp and full of life. He kept making quick, jerky movements with his head, cocking it this way and that way and that, and taking everything in with those bright, twinkly eyes. He was like a squirrel in the quickness of the movements, like a quick, clever old squirrel from the park. Suddenly he did a funny little skipping dance in the snow. He spread his arms wide and he smiled at the 5 children who were clustered near the gates, and he called out, "Welcome, my friends, welcome to the factory." His voice was high and fluty. "Will you come forward one at a time, please," he called out, "and bring your parents, then show me your golden ticket and give me your name. Who's first?" The big fat boy stepped up. "I'm Augustus Gloop," he said. "Augustus!" cried Mr. Wonka, seizing his hand and plumbing it up and down with terrific force. "My dear boy, how good to see you! Delighted, charmed, overjoyed to have you with us. And are these your parents? How nice! Come on in, come on in, come on in. That's right, step through the gates." Mr. Wonka was clearly just as excited as everybody else. "My name," said the next child going forward, "is Roka Salt." "My dear Veruca, how do you do? What a pleasure this is. You do have an interesting name, don't you? I always thought that a Veruca was a sort of, wart that you got on the sole of your foot. But I must be wrong, mustn't I? How pretty you look in that mink coat. I'm so glad that you could come. Dear me, this is going to be such an exciting day. I do hope you enjoy it. I am sure you will. I know you will. Your father, how are you, Mr. Salt and Mrs. Salt? Overjoyed to see you. Yes, yes, the ticket is quite in order. Please go on in." The next 2 children, Violet Beauregard and Mike TV, came forward to have their tickets examined and then to have their arms practically pumped off their shoulders as the energetic Mr. Wonka, and last of all, a small nervous voice whispered, I'm Charlie Bucket." "Charlie!" cried Mr. Wonka. Well, there you are. You're the one who found your ticket only yesterday, aren't you? Yes, and I read all about it in this morning papers. Just in time, my dear boy. I'm so glad. I'm so happy for you. And this? Your grandfather? Delighted to meet you, sir. Overjoyed, enraptured, enchanted. All right, excellent. And everybody ready now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. Yes, good. Now will you please follow me? Our tour is about to begin, but do keep together. Please do not wander off by yourselves. I shouldn't like to lose any of you at this stage of the proceedings. Oh dear me, no. Charlie glanced back over his shoulder and saw the great iron entrance gate slowly closing behind him. The crowds on the outside were still pushing and shouting. Charlie took a last look at them, then at the gates closed with a clang. All the sight of the outside world disappeared. "Here we are!" cried Mr. Wonka, trotting along in front of the group. "Through the big red door, please. That's right, nice and warm inside. I have kept it warm inside the factory because of the workers. My workers are used to it. Well, an extremely hot climate. They can't stand the cold. They'd perish if they went outdoors in this weather. They would freeze to death." "But who are these workers?" said Augustus Gloop. "All in good time, my boy," smiling at Augustus. "Be patient, you shall see everything. Are you all inside? Close the door, thank you." Charlie Bucket found himself standing in a long corridor that stretched away in front of him as far as he could see. The corridor was so wide that a car could have easily driven along it. The walls were pale pink and the lighting was soft and pleasant. "Ah, how lovely and warm," whispered Charlie. "I know, and what a marvellous smell," answered Grandpa Joe, taking a long deep sniff. All the most wonderful smells in the world seemed to be mixed up in the air around them. The smell of roasting coffee and burnt sugar and melting chocolate, mint and violets and crushed hazelnuts, apple blossom, caramel and lemon peel. And far away in the distance from the heart of the great factory came a muffled roar of energy, as though some monstrous, gigantic machine was spinning its wheels to a breakneck speed. "Now this, my dear children," said Mr. Wonka, raising his voice above the noise. "This is the main corridor. Will you please hang your coats and hats on those pegs over there? Then follow me this way. Good, everybody ready? Good, come on, let's go." He trotted off rapidly down the corridor, with the tails of his plum-coloured velvet coat flapping behind him, and the visitors all hurried after him. It was quite a large party of people, when you came to think of it. There were 9 grown-ups, 5 children, 14 in all, so you can imagine that there was a great deal of pushing and shoving as they hustled and bustled down the passage, trying to keep up with the swift little figure in front of them. "Come on," he cried, "get a move on, please. We'll never get around today, we dawdle like this." Soon he turned right off the main corridor, another slight, then he turned left, then he turned right, left, and the place was like a gigantic rabbit warren, with passages leading this way, that way, and in every direction. "Don't you let go of my hand, Charlie," whispered Grandpa Joe. "Notice how all these passages are sloping down onwards," called Mr. Wonka. "We are now going underground. All the most important rooms in the factory are deep, deep below the surface." "Why is that?" someone asked. "There wouldn't be nearly enough space for them on top," said Mr. Wonka. "These rooms are going to see are enormous. They're larger than football fields. No buildings in the world would be big enough to even house them. But down here, underneath the ground, I've got all the space I want. There's no limit so long as I hollow it out." Mr. Wonka turned left and right and left. The passages were sloping steeper and steeper downhill. Then suddenly, Mr. Wonka stopped. In front of him, there was a shiny metal door. The party crowded round. On the door in large letters it said, "The Chocolate Room." And that's the end of chapter 14. So if you want to read more, it's Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Take care everyone, I miss you so much. Bye bye.